Good morning, everyone. Mark Christal is my name. I'm head of the Food and Sustainability Division here in Enterprise Ireland. And you're very welcome to our webinar, Unpacking the Revised Waste Framework Directive. Thank you very much for joining us today as we break down the latest changes in EU food and textile waste policy and what it means for Irish SMEs. This session is part of Enterprise Ireland's six-part series, delivered in partnership with Vulcan Consulting, designed to help you to navigate the evolving European and national policy. The goal of this series is to demystify complex legislation and to provide you with practical insights and actionable advice. In this webinar, we will cover what the revised EU Waste Framework Directive means for you and for your business. We're delighted to be joined today by Hana, Bártákova and Clarke from Vulcan Consulting, along with our own Catriona who is a senior specialist in sustainability solutions here in Enterprise Ireland, who will share their knowledge and their insights with you and answer your questions also. If you do have any questions during the session, please put them in the chat function, which is available to you through the Zoom webinar, and we will take time to address some of them following the presentations. So with that brief introduction, I'll hand over to Hana and Una to get us started.
Thank you very much, Mark, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. So we are Vulcan Consulting. I'm just going to do a quick intro of who we are and then hand over to Una and Catriona for a brief introduction. So we are a Dublin-based firm with offices also in Brussels and Belfast, advising on EU and Irish legal and political developments across many topics such as energy, circular economy, life sciences, digital and tech. And we are really delighted to partner with Enterprise Ireland on this webinar series, where we turn new rules into practical systems that businesses can actually run. So today we'll do exactly that for the Revised Waste Framework Directive, with a sharp focus on food and textiles, and with the Irish company should do next. So my name is Hana Bártákova. I'm head of our Brussels office, and I have spent over 12 years inside the EU ecosystems. So from the European Parliament to European trade associations and consultancies, I've been helping organizations navigate the nitty-gritty of EU policies and the politics behind them. And so now I will hand over to my fellow speakers to introduce themselves, and then we can dive into the substance. So Una, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. Hello from Brussels. My name is Una Clarke. I'm a special advisor at Vulcan Consulting. I've also been here in Brussels for 12 years, working in the European institutions, political parties and NGOs. So very familiar with the background. And at the moment, I'm advising at Vulcan Consulting on two companies really about how to navigate the EU landscape and what legislation means for them. Catriona?
Good morning, everybody, and it's absolutely fantastic to be here on the webinar. My name is Catriona, and I'm part of the Sustainability Solutions team at Enterprise Ireland, where we are supporting our clients with embedding sustainability, embedding decarbonisation plans and circular economy into their business, ensuring competitiveness. I myself have over 15 years experience working in this space and delighted to share knowledge and insights today. Thank you.
So before we dive in, we would just like to share with you a quick word of the kind of EU law that we are dealing with. So as you know, there are EU regulations and directives. So an EU regulation applies directly and uniformly across all member states the moment it takes effect. There is no extra national law needed, and companies read the EU text and comply from the start date. A directive, which is what we are dealing with here, is different. It sets the goal and the minimum level of ambition at EU level, but each country must then write those requirements into its own law. So that process is called transposition, and the Irish government chooses the legal instrument and the practical plumbing, but it cannot lower the EU ambition or leave any pieces of the legislation out. So with that in mind, EU and Irish rules on the circular economy are moving fast, and that pace matters for SMEs because staying ahead is now part of basic competitiveness and market access. So over the past 6 years, the Circular Economy Action Plan has brought a wave of files to life, building on the original Waste Framework Directive that was created in 2008, and on familiar regimes for batteries, packaging and electronic waste. So this revision of the Waste Framework Directive zooms into two very high impact areas, which is food and textiles.
So just to follow up a little bit more on what Hana was saying there, we know now the general direction of travel with this directive. What does the EU want to achieve? What are the targets? What are the goals? And by when? But as to how exactly it's going to look and what it'll mean for you in reality, we have to wait for the Irish government to do this transposition process, so to write it into Irish law. This may be done through primary legislation that has to go through the Dáil, or it may just be statutory instruments or just schemes set up directly and implementation measures. We don't know yet. That's part of the conversation that's ongoing. And so while we today will point out some of the big picture items that have to be achieved and what exactly the Irish government will have to do, we don't know exactly how that will look in concrete terms yet and what it'll mean for your business. Transposition, as Hana said, is mandatory. So if it's not done correctly and to the right standard, the EU and the European Commission will bring infringement proceedings upon Ireland. So it's not possible to lower the ambition. However, there is a mechanism called the may and the shall when we talk about EU legislation. Shall is what the Irish government has to do, what's absolutely mandatory within a directive, and yet may is possible. It's not totally necessary. However, Ireland likes to gold plate, as we call it, when a piece of legislation is done to the maximum in terms of best practice and level of ambition, often because Ireland, for example, may have some of these laws and rules in place already, so we want to go a step further. So we'll see when the transposition is done, what exactly in the mandatory will happen, but also to what level Ireland's ambition will build on top of that. So transposition will be a crucial process, and you'll hear us talking about it a lot during the next few minutes.
So just for context, where does this sit in the Clean Industrial Deal story? So you have to think about the Clean Industrial Deal as the Green Deal's next act, with a harder edge on scale and industry. It is a whole of economy plan to green European businesses while keeping manufacturing competitive. And it does that by pushing several levers at once. At the headline level, it aims to cut energy bills, and we shift to a low carbon system to grow demand for EU-made clean products and to pull more investment into factories and infrastructure. It also focuses on securing the raw materials that we need, hardwiring circularity, so we use resources far more efficiently, building skills so workers and firms can deliver the transition, and opening clean trade and investment partnership to diversify our supply chains. Around those aims sits enabling tools and laws you will recognize, so targeted industrial decarbonization acts, the Innovation Fund, InvestEU, proposals for a Circular Economy Act, and Affordable Energy Action Plan. So where does the Revised Waste Framework Directive sit in that landscape? It is one of the circularity pillars in action, and its job is to reduce resources use and waste along value chains by setting the rules and incentives for prevention, reuse, and recycling before disposal. So the EU has chosen to concentrate this revision on two priority sectors, which is food and textiles, because of their high impact. For food, the directive uses binding national targets and coordinated prevention measures to cut waste. We're going to dive into that a little bit later. And for textiles, it brings in harmonized extended producer responsibility, or EPR. We're going to talk about that a lot. So that the cost of collection, sorting, preparation for reuse and recycling is funded and organized by those placing the products on the market, and with the possibility to adjust the fees to favor better and longer lasting designs. There is also a timing and competitiveness story there. By hard-coding circular requirements in food and textiles, this directive helps create consistent demand for cleaner and more circular products and services across the whole single market. So that in turn then supports the deal's objectives on scale and investment, because suppliers can invest with clearer EU-wide rules of the game. For Irish businesses, the takeaway is simple. It is not an isolated file. So this is just one piece of a bigger engine that is lowering energy costs, steering investment, securing inputs, and building skills, while circularity measures like the Waste Framework Directive reshape the day-to-day operations in very specific sectors. So our focus today is to show you exactly what that means for food and textiles, and so you can align your compliance plans with the wider industrial push rather than treating that as separate tracks.
So, before we deep dive into the exact detail, let's just talk for a moment about the EU circular economy. So when the EU speaks about the circular economy, they define it as systems that maintain value for as long as possible. And that's what we want to talk about today, and what every piece of EU legislation is geared towards in this area of the Clean Industrial Deal: reusing, repairing, remanufacturing, and recycling. They want to prioritize the value chains with the biggest gains in this regard. So, for example, we already have detailed legislation in areas like packaging and batteries. And now, as Hana said, we're moving on to food and textiles.
So here is a timeline of this directive. As you can see, it already had an exciting life before we got to the green dot where we are right now, which is the vote in plenary. So the directive was approved in plenary of the European Parliament on the 9th of September. Now we are waiting for the publication in the official journal and entry into force. From the entry into force, now the deadlines are coming to the Irish side of the spectrum. So Ireland gets 20 months to transpose the rules into national law. Textiles EPR must be operational within 30 months of entry into force. And there is an exception for micro enterprises who have also further 12 months before their EPR obligations apply. So we will dive into more details on the timeline later on, and when we explain exactly between food and textiles what is going to happen. However, you can see there that the life of the directive doesn't end with its adoption on European level. And there is still a lot of work left to do on national side. So this is a little bit more precisely what we are dealing with. This is the latest major revision of the EU's Waste Framework Directive, focusing on textiles and food industry. And now let's dive into the concrete provisions and what it means. So let's start with food. The EU has hardwired 2 targets into law. So by 31st of December 2030, member states must reduce the generation of food waste in processing and manufacturing by 10%, compared with the average for 2021 to 2023 baseline. In parallel, by that same date, so the 31st of December 2030, we must achieve a 30% per capita reduction at the retail and other distribution level across restaurants and food services and in household, again using the 2021 to 2023 as the baseline. So those are national targets. So the state will organize the measures and the data system, how to get to those targets, but businesses along the chain will be the ones delivering the reduction on the ground. There is a formal review by the end of 2027 that is scheduled to check progress and adjust if needed, see how it is going. And also the Commission will then take into account for tourism effects, so per capita numbers remain fair.
And then on the textile side, you can see there about extended producer responsibility. This is a crucial element in how the EU and Ireland will measure its success in the area of textiles. So there's a need to meet the extended producer responsibility scheme by April 2028. That means that by that date, you and your company will have to be compliant. Producers and what does that mean? Producers and importers that first place textiles and footwear on the Irish market will finance the collection network afterwards, the transport to sorting itself, and preparation for reuse and recycling. Also, and separately, financing will be for consumer information, certain surveys of municipal waste to see exactly what's going in there, data gathering and reporting, and support for research and development, improving product design and prevention. All of this will be put together through a national producer register. So another note to make for yourself is that you will have to register on this national producer register when it's set up. It will detail your company, all the kind of basic information, as well as what you place on the market and where it goes. There's also producer responsibility organizations who can help you with the process of disposing of waste and reusing, recycling, and remanufacturing. So for example, in the area of packaging, which I mentioned before in terms of a system that's already set up, Repack is the organization that's the producer responsibility organization in Ireland. So as we mentioned, we don't know exactly because we're still waiting on that transposition from the government, but it may be a system that's similar to something like what Repack does in terms of paper. There will also be, for that producer responsibility organisation, details to consumers about reuse, repair and end-of-life options. Again, just to say it, the extended producer responsibility scheme will have to be compliant by April 2028. However, if you are a micro enterprise, it's April 2029. So just make a note of those dates. In terms of that transposition, however, the Department of Climate, Energy and the Environment are currently drafting an extended producer responsibility roadmap for textiles and plan to circulate a draft for stakeholder consultation in early 2026. The EU law, the directive itself, clearly states that stakeholders should have a say in how this scheme is set up. So we'll come to later how to do that, but keep it in mind that it's written in law that you should have a say in this system. So maybe start to think about that, and we'll explain a little bit more later.
So to get to the so what test, what does it mean exactly for Irish SMEs? So for the food sector, the targets are producers, processors, retailers, and hospitality. This turns waste prevention into day-to-day business. So you will need to track and report food waste in ways that line up with the national method, because progress will be measured again against that 2021-2023 baseline. Donation programs become mainstream for both regulatory but also reputational reasons. So the directive expects operators with a significant role to put formal agreements in place with food banks and redistribution organizations, so safe, unsold food reaches people quickly and at a reasonable cost. So expect operational changes too. So from portion sizes and packaging formats to stock management and date coding practices, because the 30% per capita reductions at retail, food services and household level will not happen without any upstream changes.
When it comes to textiles, who does it apply to? Manufacturers, importers, retailers, and online sellers. All of these groups will have to pay into or participate in the extended producer responsibility scheme. Unsurprisingly, but perhaps unfortunately you might say, there are of course compliance costs with this. You'll need to register in Ireland and also any other relevant country that you first place products on the market. So every EU member state will have a register. You have to bear in mind where you first place a product on the market. There will be the fees paid to a producer responsibility organisation, depending who the government designate that task to, data reporting on the volumes, and the composition of the products that you place. However, the upside is the scheme is designed to favour more sustainable products. So the more sustainable your product becomes, the fees go down. And I'm sure that it's not news or the first time you've heard this about greening products, but there is now a financial incentive in terms of your fees will go down the greener the product is. There's also an opportunity here, obviously, for partnerships. Social enterprises, charities, and repair cafes. These are the kind of groups you need to be thinking about working with to try and build those post-supply chains. So the takeaway. The rules can be a market access baseline. Being early on measurement, donation pathways, and circular design can reduce friction and cost later and makes you a more attractive supplier in B2B chains.
So let's talk about impact and where the costs and opportunities land. So the headline is simple: costs will rise in short term, and SMEs can feel that a little bit disproportionately if the national system is a little clunky. So on textiles, fees will fund collection, sorting, preparation for reuse and recycling, consumer information and data systems. And on food, costs show up in measurement, process changes, staff training, and the logistics of donation. But the same mechanisms create also demand for eco-design and for repair and reuse services and for recycling technologies. And that demand is EU-wide. So that's why we keep stressing that this is an industrial policy story as much as an environmental one. When we look at it sector by sector, here is how it lands. So in textiles, any company placing covered products on the Irish market is in scope. Manufacturers and importers, home textile suppliers, and Irish sellers using e-commerce platforms. In food, any manufacturer or processors, supermarkets, and other retailers, and the hospitality sector are in scope for the national measures and for the 2030 reductions. So around those core actors, of course, there will be some knock-off effects for adjacent players, like waste and recycling firms, packaging suppliers, and public authorities as collection networks, donation and channels reporting system are put in place. So as we said before, because this is a directive and not a regulation, there is one caveat worth citing plainly. The EU sets the floor and the deadlines, but each member state decides the plumbing. And until Ireland publishes the transposition measures and the Irish EPR design, we cannot know every cost line, as Una already stated. So what we can do is to prepare for the constants, registration, fees, data, donation, and design. And Una is going to tell you a little bit more in detail how to do that.
So, on food and textiles, a couple of quick pictures for you to keep in mind. On food, think of a supermarket group or a contract caterer working with a food bank under a standard agreement that defines safety checks, collection windows, and who pays for the leg of who pays for which leg of the logistics. Layer in a dynamic pricing tool that marks down short-dated stock in real time, and a back-of-house training module that targets the 2 or 3 highest waste hotspots per site. That combination is exactly what the directive encourages. Prevent first, and when you cannot prevent, donate for human consumption. We have a great Irish example already, Food Cloud, which connects businesses with surplus food to communities that can use it. So perhaps it's worth looking them up if you're in the food sector. On textiles, imagine an Irish apparel importer registering on the producer register, contracting with an authorised producer responsibility organisation, and reporting quarterly volumes and material mixes. At the same time, they set up an in-store take-back and postal returns route for end-of-life items, partnering with a social enterprise that sorts for reuse and prepares for fibre-to-fibre recycling. In parallel, the design team moves a core line to monofibre fabrics with robust stitching and repairable components. That is how you position for lower eco-modulated fees. So that's what we were talking about before. The more change you make in a sustainable direction, the lower the fees, while meeting your obligations on collection and sorting. It's compliance, but it also becomes who your brand is. So what's next? What should you do now once you've got all this information from us? So first of all, we advise start early. Start looking at it now. It's going to be a very short run-in. It sounds very far away, but time, as we know, ticks on for all of us. So have a look at your supply chain. Check if your products fall under the scope. See what kind of systems might be possible to change or what could work for you in light of this scheme. Knowing that this is going to happen, put together some ideas of how it could work best for you and to start to explore those partnerships. When you have that done, join trade associations and industry consultations. Input to these discussions about what you think might work best for you. And see further down, it says engage with Irish authorities. That's a crucial part that we were talking about with the transposition. That consultation that the Department of Climate is going to run about this directive and how to put it into place. Input there. You have a right to input there. The EU has explicitly wrote it down that you have a right to input into this process and how it's designed. So use it, take advantage of it, because once the system's in place, it's unlikely to be changed. So make sure you get your point of view in early so that it can be taken into account when building the system. Point 3, just there, start measuring waste and product recyclability. See how those things are working already and see kind of what measures you might have to take in the future, and explore those partnerships with people in your area. I mentioned Food Cloud in the food sector. You can see with social enterprises or other groups that are in your area. And if there's not, point that out to government as well as part of the consultation, because that's the sort of information that they will need to know. Record what happens if you're in the textile sector to consumer clothing once discarded. Where does it go? How does it work? And for the food sector, have a look at the Food Waste Charter, because this offers a toolkit for food waste measurement, exactly how to measure those details so that you can know already what changes have to be made.
And as Una already stated, you are not left alone in this exercise. So Catriona is going to speak a little bit more about that later on, but Enterprise Ireland has practical instruments to help you measure, plan and pilot, from a short advisory vouchers into deeper capability building and research and development. Add to that the EPA Food Waste Charter Toolkit for measurements on the food side, and also the EU resources on food loss and circular textiles. The point is here not to boil the ocean. It is to build the systems you will need anyway for compliance, and then use them to unlock the efficiency and new businesses. So what are the next steps? Again, we're going to repeat a couple of dates to anchor your planning. So food targets are set for the end of 2030 with a review by the 31st of December 2027 that can adjust the targets and include a tourism correction factor if deemed necessary. For textiles, there is a 20-month transposition period once the directive enters into force, and 30 months to establish textile EPR schemes, after which, again, micro enterprises get a further 12 months before their obligations apply. There is also a general review by the 31st of December 2029 that looks at how EPR is working, including the possibility of setting prevention, collection, reuse and recycling targets for textiles, and introducing prior sorting and mixing sorting of mixed municipal waste.
So just to repeat again, what will be included in this transposition? What does Ireland have to decide how it will set it up? So when it comes to food, choose the competent authority who will be responsible from government for measuring these, which agency, or if a new agency is required. Co-designed prevention measures with stakeholders, how to avoid food waste in the first place. Set the donation framework, exactly how that works, whether it's food banks and where food banks might need to be set up, and organize data and reporting. So they're the kind of four main things that the government will need to decide. Textiles roles within the extended producer responsibility scheme will have to be decided. How will that work? And also who will be the competent authority? Will it be Repack? Will it be the electronic waste group? We don't know. We're waiting to see. Then they'll need to authorize the producer responsibility organizations, build the national producer register, and decide how practicalities like the collection networks will work with social economy actors and local authorities. Finally, just to mention briefly on online platforms, which obviously a lot of textiles are sold on, the responsibility to ensure producers who are using their services are registered. So they will check. So just bear that in mind as well. What is your role in all of this? Get your house in order. Know exactly how your systems work and how they might need to be amended on measurement, readiness to contract, and design choices. And then crucially, as mentioned, and a final point before I hand over to Catriona, bring this knowledge to consultations with the government. Bring it forward, share your information, and as a result, get a better system that works according to what you need. So thank you very much. We're going to hand over to Catriona now.
Thank you very much, Una and Hannah, for a very comprehensive overview. So what I will talk about here is how Enterprise Ireland supports circular economy. Increasingly, we are seeing circular economy become more and more part of companies' sustainability plans. And this is very important when you're thinking about, as a company, when you're thinking about your competitiveness and when you're thinking about your access to markets and how to make your supply chain resilient. And so what we have here, what I've outlined here are actually Enterprise Ireland's key targets when it comes to sustainability. Our purpose is to accelerate Irish business, And our key targets include 35% reduction of CO2 emissions from EI-supported companies by 2030, and also for 80% of Enterprise Ireland-supported companies to have sustainability plans and to measure their emissions. And under these targets, we have a number of supports in what we call the Green Transition Fund. We also share a lot of knowledge and expertise, through our website, through webinars and events, and we actually have a number of activities in terms of capability development, including Kickstarter workshops and the Climate Leadership Programme as well, that are on offer to clients to support them with their sustainability, and we include circular economy in that journey. Enterprise Ireland is a supporter of the Food Waste Charter. This is an EPA initiative, and we promote that to our clients. There's actually going to be an upcoming workshop to demonstrate what the tools are available for food waste reduction, and we're hosting this in collaboration with the EPA. And this is actually very pertinent to food clients across all food clients in different sectoral areas, such as dairy or meat or whatever it might be, when you're looking for those practical tools to reduce your food waste and to create a plan. And we also have a number of grant supports available, and these can be used in a variety of ways, whether it's from developing a circular plan, whether it's training on life cycle assessments, or to doing that research and development to develop a new circular product and help to redesign for recyclability. You can move to the next slide, please. So here's just a quick snapshot of the various supports that we have. As you can see here through the Climate Action Voucher and the Green Start, there's a possibility to access consultancy, whether that's ranging from 2 days or up to 7 days, to support with strategic development of a circular economy plan and a business model to help with a circular gap assessment. And this, for example, in food and textiles, it might help you to develop that plan, to think how to embed the strategy into your organization. And with regards to the supports that are outlined on the right, Green Plus, this is actually a training project. And what it can do is you can support your staff within your company to understand circular economy, to help them understand design, how to transition to a circular economy model, to redefine what those buyer and supplier relationships might look like, or to training on how to build a new circular economy product. It also includes training on LCA and product carbon accounting as well, which is quite applicable in this context. There's also strategic consultancy support up to €35,000, which supports environmental studies or consultancy services that are linked to investments for improved levels of environmental protection, including decarbonisation and circular economy. Thank you. Next slide, please. And the other supports that we have include a capital support for metering. And this could actually be for metering for energy, for water, for steam. This is actually very important in the overall circular economy landscape in terms of, like resource efficiency at the organizational level. And I guess last but not least, the one I really want to highlight today that's available to clients is all about the RD&I supports. So they range from innovation vouchers, exploring innovation, and larger R&D grants as well. And particularly if you were looking to, for example, do some product redesign and you want to investigate a new circular value proposition, you can look to work with research performing organizations in Ireland. You can work with a technical consultant, you can support with prototype development, and identify who those new partners might be and what's the viability of this new product as well, whether there's resources, risks, and return. So this is a bit of a snapshot of the Enterprise Ireland supports that can support you in your journey in circular economy, also relating to food and textiles. Thank you.
Catriona, thank you very, very much. And a big thank you to Hana, Una, and indeed Catriona for your presentations and your overview of the legislation. I think hopefully people on the webinar have found it a very useful insight into what's coming down the line, and also in terms of the steps that need to be taken. For the last 10 minutes or so of the webinar, I'm going to jump into questions, if that's okay, and just to try and explore some of the issues you've raised in your presentations. Hana, we might start with you, if that's okay, and you might just kind of give us an overview. How will the directive define waste and textiles?
Thank you very much, Mark. Yes, the EU is always very keen on its definitions. So according to the EU, the definition of waste is basically any substance, material, or object which the holder discards or intends or is required to discard. And for with a little bit zoom on textiles, any raw, semi-worked, semi-made up or made up product which is exclusively composed of textile fibers, regardless of the missing or assembly process employed. So that would be, in short, the definitions of waste and textile.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. And obviously, a key focus of the webinar today has been the impact on businesses, Una. And again, you might just comment or give us a sense of, if businesses fail to align with the directive, will it impact or have any on their ability to export to other EU countries? What are the potential impact for businesses in that regard?
So, in short, when it comes to textiles, yes, but food not directly, but it can still be harmful for your business. So when it comes to textiles, failing to meet the extended producer responsibility rules in the country where you first place products, as we were saying before, means you cannot legally put those textiles on the market. So that's a short answer. A little bit more detail: you must be registered in the member state you sell into, on board with the local product registration team, pay the fees and report data. Marketplaces and fulfillment providers are expected to block non-registered sellers, and authorities can order withdrawals and fines. So it is quite strict. When it comes to food, on the other side, the directive sets national waste reduction measures and targets rather than product level conformity rules. So it won't directly stop exports at the border. But if you operate in another member state, you must follow that country's measures, and big buyers increasingly require evidence of baselines, reduction plans, and donation arrangements. So in practice, non-alignment risks lost listings and tenders and penalties at home. So treat textiles extended product responsibility as a hard market access condition, and food waste alignment as a fast emerging buyer requirement. Register and comply for textiles, lock your 2021 to 2023 baseline, and implement prevention and donation you can evidence for food. That would be our advice.
Okay, that's really, really good advice and very helpful. Catriona, you mentioned in your presentation the EI supports. Again, if you were advising a company on how to get started with grant supports for the circular economy, where should companies start who are at the beginning of this journey?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark. So companies can reach out to their client advisor in the first instance if they're pretty sure that they want to go ahead with a grant support, and the client advisor will loop in the sustainability solutions team. If you have a query that you think that you want to discuss the eligibility and what a good project looks like, you can contact the Green team directly at green@enterprise-ireland.com, and we'd be happy to take your query and have a discussion with you. For clients on the call who are clients of the local enterprise offices, do contact your connections there, your client advisor there, and they can talk you through the Green for Business program. Also, perhaps the Green Start. If you're a manufacturing company, you may be eligible for that if you're a Leo client, depending if you're exporting or an international traded services company. And if you're an Uterus Nagutsta client, as I see a few of them are online today, you should also contact your client advisor and discuss with them about the supports as well, because they're available to you. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Catriona. We have just a couple of minutes left, and I'm just going to go to some of the questions that came in from our participants on the webinar this morning. Just first question, and again, I'll throw this open to whoever panel member wants to can jump in as you wish or see fit. What is the definition of food waste for manufacturers? Is there guidance on what is in and out of scope?
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I can take that. So basically, again, definitions. So the directive defines this food waste for manufacturers as products spoiled in manufacturing or storage, for example, due to spoilage or damage that are thrown away, or offcuts or trimmings from food products intended for human consumption, which cannot be used further or repurposed and are discarded, or overproduction that cannot be sold or donated and is discarded. So those are the definitions of what it can include.
Okay, great, thank you. I just another question that's just come in on the on food related again. Is there a sectoral guide for the dairy industry that can be shared with people, or?
Yeah, I can take that one, Mark. So So with the Food Waste Charter that's available through the EPA, they actually have developed a number of sectoral guides. You'll find them there for different industries, whether it's beverages, food, dairy. And in addition to that, we're also hosting a workshop on November 6th. Please through the chat, let us know that you're interested, and we will be in contact with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Catriona. That's great. Just a question on a packaging company. As a packaging company, some of our products include textile components, for example, fabric bags or textile handles on luxury. Do these textile elements fall within the scope of the new textile regulations? Again, anybody from maybe the Vulcan team who may be able to comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Mark. That's a very interesting question. Actually, yeah, the textile EPR applies to products listed in an annex, which is Annex 4C, because what would be a good directive without a lot of annexes, which includes clothing, accessories, hats, footwear, blankets, bed, kitchen linen, curtains, etc. So basically, if your fabric item is itself a product offered to the consumer as a tote bag, for example, that you offer as packaging, or that bag sold separately, or something that can be defined as a fashion accessory, it is likely to be in the scope because accessories are covered. But if the textile is only a small component of the packaging, like a ribbon or textile handle fixed to a gift box or something like that, then the item is classified as packaging, and then it would fall under packaging rules and not the textiles EPR. So in practice, you would need to check the CN code you use to place the item on the market, and if it classifies as textile articles listed in that annex, it is in scope. And if it classifies as packaging, it stays under the packaging EPR rules.
And I think, Hana, that probably applies to the next question, that bit of advice about checking out the listed product for fast fashion brands and how local Irish textile fashion producers may benefit. So what are the implications? So your advice is to check out the product and what applies. Yes,
exactly. You just really would need to see exactly where in which scope you fall in, and then of course, as Una was also saying, you can seek help wherever you can for these classifications.
Okay, just one final question I think there we might get to before we wrap up. Could someone comment on how this might affect primary agricultural producers, beef, lamb, etc.? Is that?
Yeah, I can take that one. So the directive has it that member states shall take appropriate measures to prevent generation of food waste along the entire food supply chain in primary production, etc., etc. So it does certainly apply to the area of agriculture as well.
Great, thank you. I think we have, let me just double check. I think that's all of our questions covered that I can see anyway. And as I said, the team are very happy to take any follow-up questions. So if that's it, we'll call it, maybe wrap it up for today. Just again, thank our presenters, Catriona, Hana and Una for their input today. I hope that the information provided has been valuable. And we really especially want to thank Hana and Una from Vulcan for their expertise in sharing your insights and indeed answering the questions. This is the first of a 6-part series, as I mentioned earlier on, which will unpack upcoming policies that will affect Irish business. So I hope you will be able to join us for a subsequent session over the coming weeks, and we will be in touch shortly with further details on those webinars. So again, thank you to all who joined today and all who participated, and I hope everybody has a good day.